Hello, I'm Jeff Thielman, the President and CEO of the International Institute of New England, known as IINE. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our virtual town hall on our Unaccompanied Children's Program. In our last town hall in October, we shared updates on the Afghan evacuees in our services and in our communities. Tonight, we will be talking about a very different population with an equally unique set of needs that has been joining our communities at a steadily and rapidly increasing rate for more than a decade. But first, as we begin every town hall, I would like to remind you of IINE's mission and the theory of change that guides our work. The International Institute of New England creates opportunities for refugees and immigrants to succeed through resettlement, education, career advancement, and pathways to citizenship. We have offices in Boston, Lowell, and in Manchester, New Hampshire. And we have built strong partnerships in these communities with school districts, healthcare centers, and other organizations that serve the community. IINE offers a continuum of services that helps refugees and other immigrants resettle, stabilize, and integrate into the community. Clients enter our services at various points in this continuum. Now, on to the topic of the evening, our Unaccompanied Children's Program. Children from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras have made the life-threatening journey to the Mexico-US border, seeking refuge from crime and violence, extreme poverty, and political instability. Tonight, you will hear from Sofie Suter, our Director of the Unaccompanied Children's Program, Chief Advancement Officer and Senior Vice President, Alexandra Zan Weber, and our Chief Program Officer, Anka Moraro. Sofie and Zan will share how IINE works to reunify hundreds of children a year, some as young as 2 years old, with their US-based families across New England. You will hear more about IINE staff members who provide clinical assessment and family safety planning, connect children with physical and mental health services, educate parents on the effects of childhood trauma and resources for healing, and help kids access food and basic needs, education, and legal support for asylum. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the Director of our Unaccompanied Children's Program, Sofie Suter.
Thank you, Jeff. Hello, everyone. As Jeff mentioned, my name is Sofie Suter, and I'm currently the director of the program. I have been working with IINE since 2016 and actually started as a case manager in the same program. I served as a case manager for 3 years, as well as a supervisor for 3 years. So it's a program I'm very passionate about and excited to continue in. So tonight I'm going to explain a little bit about the unique circumstances that each of our clients has, and also the personalized responses that our caseworkers use to respond to each of the families. So as you can see here, the purpose of our program is kind of divided up into 5 main areas. We reunite the families. So they're released from our custody, they're released into a family's home. Sometimes it's someone that they're really reuniting with that they know really well, and sometimes it can be somebody that they don't know very well, that just is a peripheral family member or a family friend. So once a child is arriving in that home and has been released and reunified, we support the family. We have to help the child while they're acclimating. Everything is new for them. Currently, the climate is a very big change that children are experiencing with the cold. But along with the language, a new school, a new home, a new parent figure as well. We also provide education. So we want to make sure that children are aware of the rights that they have, as well as the abuses that we consider, against the law in the United States, how they deserve to be treated, as well as giving them psychoeducation specific to each family for reunification, helping with any kind of mental health issues that we see factors for that we feel like we can identify and hopefully prevent, or things that are already ongoing. I know that a lot of these things that I'm talking about, I'm giving kind of a general overview, so we'd love to see questions at the end if you have anything specific you'd like to hear about, or anything I skip over. So please do put any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll have lots of time in the end for answering some questions as well. The next thing we do is prioritizing child safety. So we do have a lot of check-ins via phone call, but we also meet up with the children. Sometimes that means going to the school, going to the home, sometimes even going to a health center with the family. We really, in a lot of cases, are the child's kind of support outside of their parent or family. And if something's going wrong within the family, then our case managers are the people that they can reach out to. So we, as well as, teachers or other caregivers that they are in contact with in the community, we are, mandated reporters. We would report any abuse that we see. If we identify any trafficking, labor trafficking, or sex trafficking that's occurring at the time, or if we identify any factors where we feel like there might be a challenge where a child has been identified as a risk of running away. Obviously, that could be an unsafe situation for a child if they're just leaving the home without an adult caregiver. So we try to prevent whenever possible, stabilize the family, make sure they feel safe where they are so that they don't feel like they need to make this risky choice of relocating somewhere without having a plan ahead of time. Sometimes, again, that can also involve us planning with the child and the family for a child to go to a new location to live, but we try to do that, in a fashion that's orderly and organized rather than the child leaving just impulsively. So, and the fifth element here is the ensuring equitable access. So we want to try to make sure also educating families and then making sure they have access to whatever things are in the community that the child should have access to. So due to our children's status that is in the program, they're not eligible for certain government benefits, but they do have access to things such as an education. So some families may not be aware that the children can attend school. They may not be aware of the support services available at school, things like speech therapy, and then also just being able to go to the library, get a library card. So any kind of resources in the community that we feel like could be helpful to the family, we try to talk to them about it. And also if they encounter any barriers accessing them, that we're also able to help them do that. So on the next slide, it's just talking a little bit about push and pull factors. So basically, our kids have reasons for coming here, and they can be twofold. It could be things that are pushing them out of their country towards the United States, or it could be specific things in the United States that's pulling them towards coming to the US. So in terms of push factors, the main things we see are that the children are suffering hunger, poverty, just lack of economic resources, and just the economic situation in the country that's not allowing the parents and caregivers also to provide for them. There's also a lot of violence. Honduras, is one of the highest countries with highest homicide rates. So there is a lot of violence in their countries. A lot of children have seen death, have been witnesses to crimes that can also become very dangerous, even for children if they've been witness to a crime, that then they could be vulnerable as well, because now they're seen as a witness, and now whatever criminals are in the community see them as a threat. Unfortunately, there's also very heavy recruiting of children for gangs, and a lot of our kids come for that reason. Again, they feel unsafe. They feel like they don't want to be a part of this violence in their home country, and so they're trying to leave to not be recruited by somebody. And then unfortunately, also there's a lot of abuse that happens, child abuse, where kids are not able to be protected in home country, so they're leaving whoever's their caregiver in home country to hopefully be in a more safe situation in the United States. So in terms of pull factors, these are things that why, if they are pushed out of their country, why are they pulled towards the United States versus another country? So the biggest one of these is that their parent or family member is here. So that would be a reason to go to the specific person that happens to be residing in the United States to be reunified. There are some children that are identified as having a disability that they can't be cared for in home country. And so they come here also to get medical care, to get better medical care. Some kiddos as well, more the teenagers, identify educational opportunity as a motivating factor. So they want to be able to get an education that they wouldn't be eligible for in home country. A lot of our kids also only get a free education, or maybe not even K through 6. So some kids even are paying for that, and at maximum they can go through 6th grade, and then it really becomes more expensive, whereas in the United States, obviously we can go through high school. And then there's also kiddos that are motivated by future employment opportunities. So again, speaking of the poverty and hunger pushing kids out, but then also, you know, knowing that there's more opportunities for employment here in the United States. So just speaking about the journey, again, this is obviously a unique experience. Each child has a different experience. Age matters, who they travel with matters, what country they're coming from matters, what time of year they travel matters. But a lot of them are fleeing violence. They're crossing the border alone, which is what makes them unaccompanied. When they're crossing the border, the way that they come into our program is that when they're crossing the border, they are apprehended by law enforcement. And then children are eligible to be in the least restrictive setting. So because they're children, because they're under 18, they would not be put in the detention centers for longer than 72 hours. So they have to be released into a proper environment within 72 hours of being apprehended. So from the detention centers, they then go to shelters. And while they're in the shelter, they do receive education, therapy, and medical care. And then it's just a matter of time, usually can be about 30 to 60 days, where their new caregiver is identified and vetted to try to make sure that they're released as quickly as possible, but to somebody that could care for them in a safe manner and would be a safe placement. And so that's when we get the referrals. That's when the kids are referred to IINE, is when a caregiver is identified, and then we take it from there and work with the families and the kids. So we do see most of our kids coming from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Every once in a while, we'll get somebody from around the world, but those are really the main countries that we see. Mostly we see teenagers, so 14 to 17 years old. If kids turn 18, they age out of the program. So we would not get any referrals for anyone older than 18. We have gotten kids, you know, a week shy of their 18th birthday, and we only can serve them very briefly. So as soon as they turn 18, they're not eligible for our program anymore. However, we have had kids as young as 2 years old in our program. And as you can see from the slide here, it's about a fifth are really younger kids. It's almost kind of 50-50. It's 60-40 boys to girls. That has increased. There's been more girls, I would say, over the last 5 years. It used to be a little bit more an older population, a more male population. So over the last 5 to 7 years, it's gotten a little bit of a younger population and a higher female population as well. So who we're currently serving is Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Every once in a while, we'll also have cases in Maine. And we'll be growing a team in New York as well. So what are the needs that we usually see? Just thinking back to the previous slide, the person that's on the previous slide is actually now an adult, and he originally came because he was identified, well, he came to reunify with a family member, but he was identified as having a disability. He had no eyesight in one of his eyes, so he was legally blind in one eye. We helped kind of trying to get him an education. He was a little bit on the older side. He was about 15, 16 when he came. Happy to report that he was able to graduate high school after a lot of work. He was in a community where there was not a lot of bilingual support available. There was some online schooling that was really difficult because, again, everything was in English. But so we're really proud of him for kind of sticking through it. And he was able to actually give us an update after he had turned 18 that he was able to graduate. So very proud of him for sticking with it. So all of our kids that come through the program need legal support. So they are released from ORR facilities. They are released by the government into the care of the caregiver, but they are expected to attend court dates because they don't have assigned legal status yet. They need to fight a court case. So every single one of our cases needs to have legal support, legal representation to represent them in a court case to see if they're going to be eligible to remain in the United States and to get a visa or legal permanent status. Most of our children as well have experienced various traumas. Some of them come with identified mental health needs, such as depression or PTSD. A lot of them, they may not have developed PTSD yet, or it may just be that they've experienced a lot of trauma. One of which just the adjustment to coming to a new country and, you know, all the changes and acclimation that comes with it. as you can see here, we have kind of suicidal ideation and self-harm is something that's identified as being kind of a previous experience. We would watch that very closely. A lot of our children, unfortunately, have witnessed some form of domestic violence or also experienced it. Children that have experienced abuse or trafficking as well are just kind of at higher risk for developing PTSD, depression, anxiety. So we just monitor that closely. We provide psychoeducation also to whoever resides in the home that they live in to kind of watch out for certain signs as well. And then we also just talk to the child to see if they develop an interest or willingness to engage in mental health services. Unfortunately, this is a really difficult area. Each state is a little bit different, but for Massachusetts, our clients are eligible for Mass Health Limited, and the limited portion of that means that they're not eligible for support with mental health services, only for medical needs like vaccinations and doctor's visits. So a lot of our kids, if we're able to get them services, it's via a school counselor, or it would just be out of pocket. So another need that we as well have is pregnancy resources. If we have a pregnant teen, we want to make sure that they're given prenatal care, and set up with a plan also for once the baby arrives, and making sure that they also get support in terms of education and from their caregiver as a teen parent. One of the things that we also see a lot, especially with children from Guatemala, is that for some of our children, Spanish is their second language. So all of our staff is bilingual Spanish-English, but we don't have anyone currently on staff that speaks, every single dialect. There's Quiche, Quechua, Cachiquel, lots more of different dialects. So we do have language lines to help us with those, but it can be an additional barrier to families in accessing resources as well as in their education. So some of those languages as well, for example, Quiche also have a different written language. So it's just an extra challenge for the kiddos as they're trying to learn Spanish first to then be able to better communicate and read and write, and then the extra step of then learning English. And then an underlying need that's every single family, again, is the family stabilization. Again, it's different from family to family. Some kids have only been apart, their caregiver maybe 3 months. Other kids have been apart for years. We've had kids that have never actually met their parents, who like kids that come and they're reunified with dad and dad's never actually met them. So it can be quite difficult, especially if that new family, maybe dad has now a new wife and has had a few kids, and this child that's being reunified really is having a hard time adjusting into and feeling kind of as part of the family and valued. So each family, again, it's different needs, trying to figure out how they fit into the piece of the puzzle. But we kind of do our best to help the parents recognize and see what the child might be experiencing, and kind of helping them see each other's experience and kind of weave the family together in that way. So for little timeline of our program, the growth and the history. So the program launched in 2011. It was a fairly small program at the time. There was just one staff. And then between 2011 and 2018, so again, I came on board in 2016, there's usually 1 to 2 staff members. So it is a social work related job. It's case management. There's kind of fairly high stress and trauma and turnover. It's really just hard work to do for long periods of time. So we're going kind of from 1 to 2 staff members during that time. And in 2019, we grew to 3 staff members. So being able to serve more children in the New England area. In 2021, despite COVID and everything going on, we were able to grow to 5 staff members. We did briefly during COVID have some time online, but we very quickly went back to in-person visits, just because, like I mentioned, the safety is really our main priority. And we really felt that as much as also caseworker safety is priority, we wanted to be able to be at the homes and make sure that the kids were safe where they were living. So 2022 saw us reach 9 staff members, and we're happy to report that by the end of this year, ORR, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, has the goal of offering services to 100% of kids that released from care. So this is a voluntary program. Families don't have to participate. However, it used to be that only about 20 to 25% of any family was being offered assistance. So We've been advocating for years that this is something that any family should have access to and be able to decide to participate in. So that's the goal that OR has set and why we've been given this great opportunity of increasing our staff. So we're looking to be a staff of 29 by the end of this year and being able to offer services to 100% of kids released from shelter care. Another thing that's happening is that they've increased the period during which kids are served. So that's, again, we see that as a really big victory. The services had been decreasing since I joined in 2016 from 9 months to 6 months to 3 months. We really felt that in 3 months, a family couldn't receive the amount of care that they needed. There's a lot of problems that might arise a little bit later as the child feels a little bit more comfortable, or they've been going to school for a month or two, and maybe there's bullying occurring, or a child is struggling in school. So we just really felt that from the social worker lens, that we could help families much more and more thoroughly and in depth and provide better services if we're being able to give the family at least 6 months. So ORR has agreed with that. And so we're now going to be able to provide 6 months to a year of services, depending on the family's needs and the severity of the trauma of the child. So we're really happy about that. It does mean that each staff member serves fewer cases because they're serving each client for longer. So again, that's another reason why the program is growing, and we're going to have more staff because we're offering services to more children and we're being able to offer it more in depth for a longer period of time. So really excited about both of those things. So in the current climate, there's always something different happening. So like I just said, we're going to see more kids covered. Again, they can decline if they want to. It's a voluntary program, but more kids are being reached out to, families being reached out to and offered help. Some things you might have heard in the news is with Title 42, how can that affect our kids? So with us, Title 42 doesn't directly affect us in terms of children are exempt from Title 42 of being sent back across the border. However, if a child travels with their family, intending to cross the border with their family, and they can't get through because of Title 42, then a family may choose to separate in order to give the child the opportunity to enter the United States because unaccompanied children are exempt. So in that way, it's kind of leading to unnecessary family separation of a family that might have been together that at this point then can't be together anymore. So in that way, it's just kind of creating more unaccompanied children in an unnecessary fashion. So like I mentioned, the kids are being offered services. Again, they can decline if they feel they have no area or need, but it's going to be so exciting just to be able to offer these families, tell them what we offer. And then if they have encountered any difficulties with school enrollment or any other issues with the adjustment process or the reunification, that they are able to get a case manager for support. Whereas before there was a lot of criteria that had to be reached for them to even get a referral. So now there is, so what was their service eligibility previous no longer applies. So any child can get services. There is still an eligibility difference between the 6 months and the year. So kind of if complex traumas have been identified beforehand, then we might give the year services rather than the 6 months. But I think it's just already a huge achievement that anyone now will get 6 months, whereas before most people, 75% of clients just were never even offered the services in the first place. So for the next slide, I think you're going to see the challenges and opportunities that we're looking to move forward with. So I am going to head it off to Zan to discuss kind of some of the opportunities for growth that we have going forward.
Thank you, Sofie, and good evening, everyone. It's wonderful for you to be with us tonight for another town hall. This is one of our favorite opportunities to communicate to our broad audience of supporters and give you a little bit more information about our programs. I just want to start by saying, you know, I've been here at the Institute for 14 years of social worker and spent most of that time in programming. Now my passion is raising resources for it. And I want to credit Sofie Suter for in the past many years really setting the standard of care for us in this program. And as she has said, helping us advocate at the federal level for increased services and support. Which gets me to our challenges. Though you've just heard a lot about a very complex program that we offer, no amount of slides would be able to hold the entirety of the program and its complexity. At the same time, there's really only so much the Institute can do with public funding for a program. And like all of our programs, we're seeking public and private funding to be able to go beyond a government contract and really deliver the services that families need. As with many of the immigrants in our community, legal status is a huge barrier to gaining benefit support. And one of our greatest challenges is not being able to connect every child in this program to an experienced immigration attorney to apply for a very special visa that most children are eligible for, and or asylum, both of which can lead to a pathway to staying in the US. So one of our greatest objectives is we have a legal team. We have a wonderful legal team, which serves thousands of clients a year. One of our goals is to be able to find resources to support the children in the unaccompanied minor program through our legal program. Another challenge, as Sofie has described, are mental health resources. And if you caught what she said, in Massachusetts, there is actually a better safety net for some health resources than in other states. But even in Massachusetts, we do people without the right status do not become eligible for the whole suite of services that they often need. And the most important service that we're not able to offer and often secure for children are mental health services. And as Sofie said, these kids, most have been highly traumatized. The trauma can affect and impair their functioning. It can absolutely affect their ability to adjust. And though we go out of our way to try to find resources and give us a lot of support and psychoeducation to families, most of these kids need much deeper clinical care. An opportunity that we have that we wanted to share tonight is that, as Sofie said, our program is growing like significantly. It's tripling in size. We're thrilled. We may be able to serve upwards of 1,000 children this year, but we are currently looking for some really great team members to join us. They have to be bilingual case specialists and experienced in some level of case management or child support services. So I just wanted to throw that out there tonight and let everyone know, if you have any leads for us, to check out our website and to encourage people to apply. We can move on. Other ways to help. So number one, connecting to the legal and mental health resource challenges we have is to donate and to support our program. Like I said, we have a legal team. We're trying to get a little bit of work off the ground. It's really expensive and complicated legal work, the visas for children in this program. And we're trying to work and build toward that level of support. We are trying to do as much as we can with the resources that we have. And one of the ways communities can support us now is with donating items for some kits that we are hoping to put together and deliver to kids coming into the program. Those are arrival kits, which may be like a nice welcome card to our community, some essential toiletries, gift cards to clothing stores, to grocery stores. These are all of the items that can really help a person, a child and their family, feel connected and have a little bit more resources than they would have on arrival and as they're trying to adjust. In terms of mental health, what we can offer with our current resources now are people to participate in helping us put together wellness kits. And that can look like a variety of different items. Like Sofie said, we have kids from 2 years old to 18, but we're centering the opportunity around some soothing tea, colored pencils, a diary for journaling, some stickers, those are really popular, coloring books, stuffed animals, and some other items, if you can think of ways that other things can be added. To both volunteer for the program or to offer to help us with these kits, you can go to this website, our website, to become a volunteer and connect with us directly. And then I just have one last slide, which is everything else you can do, which I think I show you every time we have a town hall. We're really hoping to get more people in our communities engaged in our work and understanding who is arriving in our communities as our new neighbors and as the next step for our communities and our future. We can do that by having people subscribe to our newsletter. We put out a fantastic newsletter just this week. We do it every month. Really gives you some insight into our work. Volunteer opportunities. We have the kits available, and we have lots of other opportunities in some of our other programs at the Institute by site. So you can get on our website and see what we have available by site. And then, like I said, we're hiring for unaccompanied minor case specialists, but also we have other employment opportunities. So we're always really excited and ready to welcome lots of staff, and have grown significantly in the last couple of years, and would love to be introduced to people who could join our team. So that is the end of the presentation, and we'd love to take some questions and answers. We have our Chief Program Officer, Anka Moraro, here. We're going to take down the slide deck, and we'll open it up to your questions. If you can put them in the Q&A, we'll go from there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anka Moraro. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope this presentation was informative, and please feel free to add questions to our Q&A. There are already some questions that came in that I'm going to read for Sofie to help me respond. So one of the first questions that we receive is that, have we seen an increase in Venezuelan children?
We have not seen an increase in Venezuelan children. We actually have not seen, in my 7 years, any Venezuelan children. We've had some kids from Peru or Brazil, but generally it's Central America and fewer South America.
What is the percentage of the clients that we are serving that are not Spanish speaking?
So I would just say, if you're saying not first language Spanish, so because we have some Guatemalans that have a dialect, I would say it's maybe 90 to 95% Spanish is the first language. And then I would say that 5 to 10% is either someone from like Bangladesh or China that just speaks a language that's completely not Spanish, or Brazil and speaking Portuguese, or it could be a child that maybe they speak Quiche first and then Spanish. But so I would say 90 to 95% of clients we're able to communicate with and they're fluent in Spanish.
What is the percentage of children who are reunited with their parents?
So I would say for that, I don't have like a percentage in front of me, but I would say at least a third are with one of their parents. Most children are not with both of their parents, but I would say about 25 to 30% have with one of their parents, or a step parent, and then other kids could be with like an uncle, an aunt, a family friend, or a sibling. So we also do have a few kids that are unified with a sibling that may be only 20 or 21 years old, which obviously comes with its own difficulties as well, with a sibling becoming a parent at such a young age.
Right. How many children do we currently have in services right now?
I would have to check on that for you. I would say it's around 200, but I would have to check the exact number for you.
200 with the hope of going on 1,000 by the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah. And I saw a question about education as well. 163 currently.
Great. And how is IINE interfacing with schools, knowing that some families are maybe fearful for advocating for themselves, or maybe they have work schedule barriers or other barriers? How do we help these families?
So we see the schools as one of our greatest kind of like support systems for the kids. We try to get kids enrolled as quickly as possible. As I mentioned, they offer mental health services, education, somewhere for the kids to be all day, you know, lunches, breakfast. So even at our first home visit, we usually go to families with a packet, with the registration packet already printed out to kind of facilitate the enrollment of the student. And then we go over all of the different things that the school offers in terms of free lunches, transportation, and just kind of making sure what the child has. And then we do frequent check-ins with the child in terms of report card, but also with the parent, just to make sure that the child is being given all the resources they need to succeed. So a lot of families might not know, for example, the amount of ESL available. Some schools try to say that they can either provide special education or Spanish support. They don't have any staff. So we kind of let the families know how much a public school in the United States is required to do. So public schools are required to support their kids' needs for learning. So we are definitely very strong advocates with schools, and a lot of cities, fortunately, we have like certain cities that there's a lot of kids that are in. So the caseworker will build a relationship with the school social worker, with the registration, and the McKinney-Vento, the homelessness liaison, in order to kind of like have that relationship established. If we have a child coming in newly, to kind of already advocate for that support going in, but then also if it's needed to just follow up and keep in contact with the family to make sure they're accessing what they're able to.
Have we seen an increase in Nicaraguan children?
No.
Okay, so somebody, Jacqueline, would like to do a collection of outdoor clothing for children that are used but in good condition. Would that benefit our children?
Yes, I think jackets and gloves are always really helpful. I would say we don't have a lot of need for XL clothing. So I would say small, medium. Most of our kids are fairly small. So we just, yeah, we don't need that much of like XL or L, maybe a few largest, but definitely no XL or double XL.
All right. Another question is about if all the children that we are helping have family members here to be reunited with.
Not all children have a family member. Some are reunited with a family friend. So that can just be someone that's identified by their parents as kind of being a suitable caregiver. But that is one of the reasons as well why we're involved. So we want to make sure that a child, if they're not with their parent, have like a responsible adult, you know, aside from their home living situation, that could be checking in with them and finding out if that situation's not a good situation. So unfortunately, in the past, you know, there has been human trafficking concerns. Kids are vulnerable to that. They're not speaking the language. They're not familiar with their surroundings. They may not be aware of their protections under the law as far as labor trafficking is concerned as well. So that's definitely something we always inform kids of and are checking in about to try to make sure that the child is safe in that new home environment.
Also, the children that we work with, they're not eligible for legal adoption or foster care. Is that correct?
That's not entirely accurate. So if the child becomes homeless, like if their caregiver decides to not care for them, or if they're involved with CPS, with Department of Child and Family Services, then they could be removed from the home and then they could be in foster care. We do end up closing the case if a child is going to be in long-term foster care, because that's also a state-funded program. So we do not remain open if it is looking like the child is on track to remain in foster care. I have to say that really doesn't happen that often. Adoption is an option for certain families. However, it's usually better for children that are younger. So a lot of times we've been told by attorneys, if the child is 16 or older, it's difficult to kind of get them adopted in time. You have to, in order to get status, you want to be under 18 years old at the time of adoption. So in terms of the legal case, it's not always that like adoption is the solution.
Do we refer to other agencies for foster care?
We do not refer for foster care. So usually the children are with the caregiver that they're with. If for whatever reason they're wanting to move, they'll try to identify a different family member, a different person that they could go and live with. Our sponsors, our caregivers are not paid. So it's not like foster care in that sense where if you're a foster parent, you're paid to care for this child. It's just you're choosing to care for the child with your own funding. So we can't refer to foster care. But if they are put within DCF custody for a reason of abuse or neglect, then at that point, the state would provide them with foster care.
And which are the neighborhoods and cities that most of our clients reside?
I mean, that's New England wide. I think some unsurprising answers are like Chelsea, Lynn, New Bedford kind of has high immigrant communities. But we kind of see them throughout the state, all the way west in Massachusetts, Providence, Rhode Island, Hartford, Connecticut. So we kind of see all throughout New England, we see cases, but there's definitely the bigger cities have bigger populations, I would say, to put it very generally.
At what age are families no longer responsible for children?
That's kind of the legal definition, the same for everyone, whether a US born child or any other child. So at 18, you're technically an adult and you could care for yourself. So at 18, for example, our caregivers could start charging rent for a child if they wanted to. But prior to the 18th birthday, the caregiver is responsible for providing food, providing lodging, any basic necessities for the child, and the child cannot be obligated to work.
Can you explain a little bit if there is a path to citizenship for the children?
Yeah, so it depends case by case. We see a lot of kids do SIJS, which is the Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. In order for someone to obtain that, they have to be not residing with both parents, and they have to have experienced abuse, neglect, or abandonment by one of their parents. So basically a reason why they would not want to return to home country and why now they're here. To get this status, you have to go to family court, you have to be appointed, you have to have a guardian here in the United States with special findings, and then from there you go to immigration court and you complete that visa. Other kids we see get asylum, which is a fear of returning to home country due to persecution, due to your identity, either political, sexual orientation, gender identity. So it could be a lot of different reasons. And then there's also T visas and U visas are kind of the other two that we see, but yes, there are legal paths. The hearings can go on for a few years and it's difficult to obtain an attorney, but yes, so that's the legal process that the kids are in.
In your experience, what are the most challenging issues that you've encountered during the parent-child reunification?
It can be difficult because teenagers can be difficult, and teenagers having to go to a home where the person is not their parent. So like the example I gave, we've had in the past, it was a girl was 17 and she was reunified with her brother was 19. He was very excited to welcome her and support her, but he, just barely turned 19 himself. He was still completing high school and working. He's also her brother. So it just can be difficult to have kind of household rules and expectations and have the teenage sibling follow through with the expectations you set for them and kind of really respect that. But regardless if it's a young caregiver, just kind of that expectation of you're coming to a new home, maybe in home country, you really had to fend for yourself and there weren't a lot of rules. And now here, all of a sudden there are rules and it's a new person. So I think just kind of getting settled and having those rules and expectations set up, and then just kind of connecting the family, I think as well, can be hard, especially because a lot of our families work really hard, work long hours. So really trying to find time to connect. And that's really the main work that we're doing, is trying to help the families connect, having those difficult conversations, setting up those rules so that the child's not at risk of disrupting this placement to go somewhere else for fear that it's not working out or they're not wanted where they are.
Can you describe a little bit the training that our case specialists have to go through in order to qualify to work with the children?
Yes, so there is a lot of training, but better well trained. So there's over 20 hours of online training. It's kind of live online training. There's also many different background checks, so an FBI background check, a sexual abuse background check, a child abuse and neglect background check for different states and for the United States. We also do have new caseworkers observe veteran staff on visits, and then we also observe new staff doing home visits so that we feel comfortable with people, performing at the standard. And then we have ongoing trainings of 20 professional hours of development annually as well. So it's quite the training. It takes a month of before somebody goes to a home by themselves, at least, at minimum.
Thank you, Sofie. And I think the last question is, are there any volunteer opportunities in the program?
So because of the vulnerabilities of our clients being undocumented and being minors, we don't have any direct contact opportunities. So kind of the main opportunity at the moment is for the wellness kit and the welcome kit, or any kind of donations that people are able to give. We can't have anybody kind of go to the homes because people don't want to, make their home addresses known necessarily. And because of, the kids that have experienced past trauma. So even our caseworkers have to go through all these different background checks to be able to be caseworkers. So we don't want to have people going to the homes. I do know that IINE has opportunities for, food bank deliveries, which some of our families benefit from. But so our program's not as much an in-person volunteer opportunity as much as some of the other adult programs.
So it looks like there is another question just came in.
Mhm.
What percentage of children that you work with qualify for legal pathways to citizenship?
I would say probably almost 100. Most of the kids. The only way really that you wouldn't would be if you're residing with both parents here and haven't had an adverse experience in any way. It's more usually a problem of like getting an attorney to evaluate the case. So there's a backlog, there's waiting lists, and they're very expensive. But I would say, 90 to 95% of kids have some kind of factors. We can never give legal advice. I mean, I could look at cases and say probably this might be a path, but we don't advise our families in terms of legal advice. We just kind of advise them of the main visas available and give them resources for where they could seek out a consultation. But we don't have currently yet the capacity to provide legal advice to clients.
Great. Thank you so much, Sofie. Thank you everyone for joining us. Jeff, if you want to take it away.
I'll take it away. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I also want to thank Sofie, Zan, and Anka for putting together this presentation. I mean, as you see, we have a passionate group of people who care deeply about these children who have overcome quite a bit to come to the United States and restart their lives and rejoin their families. And so we appreciate your support for these children. As you saw in the presentation, we are growing the program. We're going to be serving a lot more children over the next year or so because of the great need of children who have crossed the border and need assistance and support from organizations like ours. So we appreciate all you can do to support our work, and supporting our work usually starts by understanding what we do. And we hope that tonight you got a better understanding of this important, very passionate part of our mission. And this is something I can tell you that everybody in leadership, our board on down, cares about very deeply. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening. And you can send questions to us offline through our website. Have a good evening.